Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Begin this meeting of Chicago Metropolitan Agency for Planning. This meeting is being live streamed. Members, in order for online attendees to hear, please be sure to make sure you are unmuted. Your microphone when speaking, please identify yourself when making or sending a motion to the secretary. Can capture who is making that motion. For those attending in person, please complete the sign-in sheet located in the hallway before you leave. And if you wish to make a public comment, please fill out the public comment card and return it to a staff member. For those participating via Zoom, please keep your microphones muted unless you are called upon to speak. When appropriate on the agenda, we will request comments from those online, and you can indicate your desire to speak via the chat box. Staff will be monitoring Zoom and will recognize you when it's time for you to speak. With that, Aaron, please call the roll.
Great. Thank you, Mayor Bennett.
Present.
Frank Beal,
Present.
President Brawley,
Present.
Mayor Curry, Mayor Grasso,
Here.
Mayor Hofert,
Here.
Nina Itamudia, Mayor Noak,
Here.
President Reinbold, John Robertson, Mayor Rotering, Joanna Ruiz,
Here.
Carolyn Schofield, Ann Sheehan,
Here.
Matt Walsh, Leanne Redden, and Dr. Kuros Mahamamadian.
Before I call a quorum, entertain a motion for the board to accept those on the Zoom call, which are
Mayor Hopert, Nina Itamudia, Leanne Redden, Ann Sheehan, and John Noak. Mayor Noak.
Second.
moved and seconded. Questions, if not, all in favor, signify by a vote of aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, vote no. The motion carries, and welcome those on Zoom. Moving on, first item on the agenda.
A quick announcement about, hold on. The appointment of
Oh,
the advisory group.
2.0. Not number one.
No, we're good. One was called to order.
I'm sorry. Under an agenda item, every year at our June meeting, announce steps to form an advisory group to discuss the appointment of officers, including the chair, vice chairs of the board and executive committee members. This group will consist of members representing each of the regions, Chicago, Cook, and the Collier counties. And I will work with Aaron on directing that activity to work with those who will be represented from those areas to serve on that committee and make a report back in September. So thank you. Under the executive director's report, Aaron?
Great. May has been busy and productive and carried right into the month of June here. As I noted in my email to you all, I am incredibly pleased to announce that we are receiving $2 million from the state. Our ask is, this is our third year going down and asking for additional funding to help support our local communities across the region and the needs that aren't covered by our transportation dollars. The funding will come to us through the Department of Human Services, whose mission is to respond to the needs of all people in Illinois so they can lead healthy, safe, and enriched lives. We do believe that this aligns well with our mission here at CMAP, and the intentions of our funding request were to diversify our funding sources to really be able to be more responsive and have dynamic expertise to afford the communities across our region just the expertise that they might need in issues that go beyond transportation. So this will allow us to address the directives in the Regional Planning Act. Again, we're looking right now to figure out how we're going to activate this as soon as possible, but thinking about sort of land use, economic development, water, climate, and other work that we are so anxious to keep moving on here across the region. It'll also provide us some resiliency in the face of uncertainty in the federal funding landscape, so we're appreciative for that. I want to thank everyone who reached out to legislators, who helped us find bill sponsors. Again, I think without your support, we wouldn't have been successful, so thanks to everyone here. We'll have a longer legislative update at the end of the meeting. CMAP Safe Travel for All program marked a significant achievement this past month here with the adoption of the countywide safety action plans for Cook, DuPage, Lake, Kane, McHenry, and Will counties, supported by our federal Safe Streets and Roads for All grant. These plans will serve as regional, sub-regional roadmaps to reduce serious traffic injuries and fatalities, especially among vulnerable road users across our region, so people who aren't necessarily inside of a car, in addition to those who are. We do have the final plans posted to their respective websites, linked to our website as well, if you'd like to take a look there. With these plans now adopted, all of the counties and communities across our region are eligible to apply for hard infrastructure dollars from the federal program that's open right now. Applications are due June 26th. We do encourage applicants to connect with our Safe and Complete Streets lead, Lindsay Bailey, to explore opportunities to advance traffic safety locally as well. So if you would like to make that connection, I'm happy to make that after the meeting here. Just a little preview next of our agenda here. You know, this board meeting reflects some key moments in both our regional planning work and our agency's ongoing support for local implementation. We will begin by sharing a board approval of the federal fiscal year FY26 to 2030 CMAC, the Congestion Mitigation Air Quality Improvement Program, STP, Surface Transportation Shared Fund, and the TAP, the Transportation Alternatives Program, local program dollars. These critical funding sources help communities advance projects that align with our regional goals for cleaner air, reduce congestion, and safer, more accessible travel across our region. And so these investments really do underscore our commitment to prioritizing transportation strategies that benefit the entire region. We will also hear from staff about the 2026 Regional Transportation Plan Existing Conditions Report, which sets the foundation for the next Regional Transportation Plan. The team will highlight some trends that will help us shape this long-term vision. And then we will hear an update from our technical assistance call for projects, which showcase the breadth of local planning needs and the strong demand for CMAP support. And then finally, wrap it up with that legislative update and covering some of the state and federal activity that could impact regional funding, planning, and implementation efforts. And then a final note for you all here, you know, we are also in the process of planning for the next vision for the long range plan. You've heard me talk about this before, but it is something that I am excited for, and excited for your leadership and support in helping us develop and craft that long range vision. You know, we're shifting to this multi-plan framework here, with the vision being sort of that hub of all of the spokes of the modal plans or climate plan, the resiliency plan, that will replace the 2050 plan over time and collectively serve as the region's comprehensive plan. We're targeting completion in 2027 for this vision. Again, it will serve as our North Star for the region. With you, our partners, and our stakeholders, we really want to define what our region must do together and how we continue to stave off critical changes that are on the horizon, and make sure that what is developed and what the strategies we deploy really help us achieve those goals here. We'll officially launch this process at the State of the Region event November 4th. I'm sure you've heard me say that before, and my team, but November 4th, mark your calendar. Again, we want to build excitement. We want to have an event that is reflective of the diversity of our communities here across the region, and catalyze other partners to participate in this process. So I think before we get into the agenda, I am just excited to share with you, we've sort of honed in on a new name for this vision. We are calling the vision for Northeastern Illinois the Century Plan, which is a little bit different than previously, but it's something that resonates, I think, with the work that we do here today, with a tagline of solving for tomorrow today. And just a little bit on why the Century Plan. Again, you know, Century really broadcasts that this plan is long range, that is future focused. It also distinguishes CMAP from a number of our other plans. We can use it as an anchor to sort of say the Century Plan, the 2090 update, or the Century Plan, our climate-focused future. And so this will be the anchor for our series of plans that come out of that. With help from our consultants, we're also building a unique brand around this name, counting on sponsorships to offset the costs for our November event, working with World Business Chicago and the Greaterland Chicago Economic Partnership friends that we have to help us support and fund these activities that we're excited about. So more to come in the coming months, and it concludes my update. I'm happy to answer any questions, but this is our last meeting of the summer before we come back in September. So please, again, you're welcome to reach out to me over the summer. I will be reaching out to you, I'm sure, but if there aren't any questions, we can just get into the content.
Any questions of Erin? I like the Century Plan.
Thank
Somebody
you.
online?
It looks like Leanne has her hand raised.
Leanne?
Nope. Okay. We just had, oh, you know what? That's the cursor on the screen.
And the chair recognizes Matt Walsh for being in attendance.
Yep.
Okay, next item is the consent agenda. There are two items. One is the previous minutes, and the second is a one-year agreement with 4 optional renewals for Microsoft 365 G5 at a cost of $1.2 million. Those are the only 2 items on the consent agenda. I'll entertain a motion to accept.
Motion
So-
approved, Noak.
Second, Holford.
Moved and seconded. Any questions? If not, all in favor, signify by a vote of aye.
Aye.
So many online here. Motion carries. On to the next item, which is the, actually a recommendation by the executive committee to the board regarding personnel. The board will have, an option to choose whether we go into exec session or accept the recommendation of the executive committee. And it's basically, based upon, staff salaries for the upcoming year. Is there a motion to waive, executive session?
So moved, Noak.
Second, Sheehan.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, signify by a vote of aye.
Aye.
Opposed,
Aye.
vote no. The motion
Aye.
carries. And then again, before you are a recommendation of the executive committee to the board on the executive director's performance review and contract as recommended, and also involving the staff salaries for the upcoming year. The executive committee has recommended that the director receive an average merit increase consistent with what was provided to the agency's staff. While the amount to be determined, still to be determined, the average merit increase is expected to be between 3% and 3.5%. Any questions on that? If not, I'll entertain a motion to accept.
So
that.
moved.
Second,
Holford.
Noak.
Moved and seconded. Any questions? If not, all in favor, signify by a vote of aye.
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 I'm glad you were in the executive session, John.
I'm on this.
Moving on.
If I could just,
Yes, go ahead.
you know, at this time of year, it is so, I'm so thankful and appreciative to be working for this board. I think the comments that you all provided to me on my annual evaluation really helped me gather my thoughts about how to continue to do the good work here at CMAP. And I just want to express my appreciation for the support that I have from all of you as leaders and me making sure that we are driving this agency towards our shared regional goals. So thank you.
Thank you, and certainly on behalf of the board, and certainly the recommendation of the committee, based upon your review, I agree. We are fortunate to still have you as our executive director. Your leadership and your communicative skills throughout this region have been just outstanding, and the record of this agency continues to be exemplary to not us just in the region, but even our work that's taken place with the state of Illinois, which is the one that asked us to become an agency. And I'll make some comments later about funding, but we thank you for the great job, and staff. Staff, without a doubt, behind the scenes, all this paperwork that we receive and all the charts and graphs aren't magically done. They're done by a lot of dedicated staff people, and we thank you too.
Yes, that's right. I wouldn't be able to be nearly as successful as I am without my staff. So thank you.
All right, moving on. We are under 6.1, the congestion mitigation CMAP.
All right,
Karen, comment, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Kama. Good morning. Kama Dobbs. I am the principal for our federal transportation funding programs. On your agenda today, staff is seeking your concurrence with the proposed federal fiscal year 2026 through 2030 congestion mitigation and air quality, surface transportation shared fund, and local transportation alternatives program, CMAC, STP, and TAP for short. Before seeking your concurrence with the recommendations, I want to spend just a few minutes on why and how CMAP develops these programs of projects. So as the Metropolitan Planning Organization for our region, we understand that infrastructure assets are designed to have 50 to 70-year lifespan. So we must plan for the long term and have a goal of understanding how these investments will align and be relevant with future needs for the region. We also know that government funding is scarce. As the MPO, we have a responsibility to make sure our region doesn't overspend and that projects are being prioritized and developed in concert with one another. We also believe in good stewardship, so we provide transparency around how government funding is being allocated to transportation projects through regional collaboration with our partner agencies. That's all of you, that's everyone sitting around this table tomorrow and the MPO Policy Committee, as well as the people that live, work, and play in Northeastern Illinois. So one of our most significant responsibilities as both the MPO and as the state's regional planning agency is the development and implementation of the Regional Transportation Plan, or the RTP. Go to 2040 and On to 2050 are the most recent plans. And as you'll hear on your next agenda item, we're currently working on our next Regional Transportation Plan, or RTP. It's through the RTP development that this board and the MPO Policy Committee collaborate across the region to set the policy foundation for our work based on existing conditions, forecasted changes to land use and travel patterns, as well as reasonably expected transportation revenues. Although the RTP identifies a number of regional capital projects, which are projects of a scale and cost to impact the capacity of the system across the region, there are hundreds of other transportation projects that take place in the region, which are documented and monitored through our Transportation Improvement Program. Our TIP is the document that governs the transportation programming processes in the region and is the mechanism for monitoring the funds programmed within each fiscal year to ensure that the region's programs are fiscally constrained, meaning that the programming never exceeds the revenue available to the region in those years. This is especially important as we collaborate with our partners to implement the RTP, rolling up their programs into our fiscally constrained TIP, along with the programs that CMAP develops directly, which brought me before you this morning. So quickly looking at how the funds flow, we see that federal transportation legislation directs federal funding to the states. And while many federal sources are managed by IDOT, there are three major programs that federal legislation directs to CMAP as the MPO. Those are STP, CMAQ, and TAP. The amount of each fund source that we receive is determined by a combination of federal law and state distribution formulas that involve all of the state's MPOs. It is through the development of these programs where we can lead by example, collaborating across the region to use data-driven selection processes to identify projects that move the needle on the things that are important to us. Our process for programming the funds we receive is overseen by two project selection committees, one focused on STP and one focused on CMAP and TAP. These committees include voting advisory members from the councils of mayors representing the municipalities of the region, the city of Chicago, the counties, our transit agencies, IDOT, and our federal partners. We program for 5 years at a time, soliciting project applications through calls for projects every 2 years. The goal of each call being to program the final 2 years of that 5-year program and to fill in any gaps in earlier years where funds may have come available due to cost changes or more revenues available to the region through updated revenue estimates. The methodologies established by the committees must, of course, consider federal requirements. For example, as noted here, the CMAP program must consist of projects that reduce transportation emissions and cannot be used for projects that add single occupant vehicle capacity. But most importantly, the project types considered are those that are regional priorities. The methodologies call for data-driven quantitative evaluations and consider priorities of the RTP, including inclusive growth, implementation of complete streets, improved resilience, and access to transit services. So looking at each fund source individually, starting with the shared fund, the purpose of the STP shared fund is to accomplish regional scale projects that can make large and lasting contributions. For the current cycle, there's about $70 million available to program. This program cuts across a wide spectrum of eligible project types shown here that touch all modes of transportation. Application for this funding are evaluated on their project readiness, transportation impact, planning factors that support the RTP priorities, as well as sub-regional priorities. I do want to note transportation impact includes both evaluating the current needs in the project area, as well as the cost effectiveness of the proposed projects. The purpose of the CMAQ program is to improve air quality through reduced emissions. For the current cycle, there's about $175 million available to program. The CMAQ program has 5 project categories, ranging from intersection improvements and signal interconnects that improve traffic flow, projects that shift people out of their cars to other modes, and projects such as alternative fuel vehicles that provide direct emissions reductions. These projects are evaluated primarily on the cost effectiveness of their emissions benefits and also on their transportation impacts and inclusive growth. Finally, the TAP program is focused on implementing On to 2050's recommendation to complete the Regional Greenways and Trails Plan. Approximately $52 million is available to program this cycle. TAP projects are evaluated on the degree to which they complete that plan, the market for the facility within the project area, safety and attractiveness, inclusive growth, and project readiness. During the call for projects that was open from October to December of 2024, we received 88 applications. More than 20 applications did request consideration under multiple fund sources, which is why the total here is 118 and not 88. These applications requested over $1 billion in federal funds, which could seed other improvements up to over $7.5 million. After the applications were submitted, CMAP staff spent January through March completing the evaluation and scoring of the applications. Then staff used the scoring results to develop recommendations for project funding. This is a pretty dynamic process that involves not just the scoring, but also considers project readiness and the years when funding is available to help us provide a balanced and fiscally constrained program. The staff recommended programs were presented to the respective project selection committees in April, and a public comment period was held from April 4th through May 2nd. 4 public comments were received on the programs. 3 of those comments were submitted in support of a project that was recommended for TAP funding, and 1 comment requested the addition of 5 projects that had not been submitted during the open call. The project selection committee reviewed the comments at their May meetings, and based on the nature of these comments, no changes were made to the draft programs. The final programs approved by the project selection committees were incorporated into chip changes that were reviewed by the Transportation Committee on May 30th. The Transportation Committee is recommending MPO approval of those tip changes tomorrow. The details of the programs and the tip changes were included in your meeting materials today. The summary here shows that the recommended programs include a total of 40 projects that were selected from the 88 applications. These projects are spread throughout the region and will provide over $23 million for direct emissions reduction, over $83 million for transit facility and access improvements, over $86 million for intersections, traffic flow, grade separations, road and bridge improvements, and over $103 million for bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure improvements. The $296 million in federal funding program for these projects is leveraging an additional $700 million in other fund sources for a total program of about $990 million. So your concurrence with these programs is what's being requested this morning ahead of tomorrow's MPO Policy Committee consideration of the tip changes.
Questions? Thank you. You do a great job, and we also appreciate your work with all the COGS, staff of the COGS. They count on you so much for guidance, and we thank you for that.
Absolutely, and we could not develop these programs without them. They are such a big part of this. So the thank you goes right back to them.
Thanks. Questions on the recommendation? If not, I'll entertain a motion that we do accept the CMAC program.
Motion to approve, Noak.
Moved and seconded. Any questions? If not, all in favor, signify by a vote of aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. Next item is under the Regional Transportation Plan update. You giving it or no?
No, I'm not. We've got Ryan Tomto, Principal Analyst, and Julie Reschke, Senior
Okay, yeah.
Analyst, here to talk a little bit about the Regional Transportation Plan update. Ryan?
Good morning.
Morning.
Make sure I can. Okay. Again, yeah, my name is Ryan Tomto. I'm a Principal Policy Analyst, and I use he, him pronouns. So I'm just going to be up here giving a brief update. Julie Reschke will be providing the overall highlight of this agenda item, which is the existing conditions report. But I did want to just take a moment to talk about overall progress in developing the next RTP. And so with regional capital projects, want to note that we have collected project information from all of our implementing partners to develop the initial list and have begun the process to evaluate those projects. Just want to take a moment to express our gratitude to our implementing partners who took a lot of time that they didn't really have to put in the effort to collect that project information and submit it and work with us to make sure we had the right information. It's a process, and we really appreciate all the time and effort they put into that. But we're working to analyze that right now. We're modeling those projects to understand what benefits and impacts they'll have on the region, and then we'll be using that later this year to have come back to our committees and to the board and the MPO to talk through the prioritization of those projects. Additionally, work continues on the financial plan. For this work, Resource Group met just earlier this week to talk about reasonable expected revenues. So we're working to put together the forecast for for those revenues, as well as the expenditure forecast. And we'll be coming back later this fall to talk through the draft forecast for that. Also just wanted to touch on public outreach. Our questionnaire remains open. We've received approximately 1,000 responses so far, so really excited about the turnout. Thank you to everybody who's been sharing that and getting the word out. That'll remain open through the end of this calendar year, so we continue to collect information there, and we'll be reporting out what we hear from that. I also want to note that we have really kind of ramping up our efforts around face-to-face public outreach across the region. We're in communities at farmers markets and fairs and places where people are already meeting to engage with the public, to hear their thoughts. What are the challenges they're experiencing with the transportation system, and what would they, what do they think would help improve it? One of note, I shared this at Transportation Committee, so it's a repeat for anybody who was attending that, but one of my favorites of late was the McHenry County Touch a Truck event. We had a booth there. And really the conversations were focused with parents who were sharing their experiences of, the challenges they face as parents and trying to get around the region. But we were also engaging with kids as part of that event, and that's always a good time. The main takeaway, vast majority of kids that we were having conversations with emphasized the need for us to focus on teleportation. So just want to note that probably won't make it into our emerging technology report, but something for us all to be thinking about. But again, yeah, we have events coming up in Romeoville, Chicago Sustainability Fair, tons of events across the region. So really excited for that. And with that, I'll turn it over to Julie, who will walk us through the main event here with the existing conditions report.
Good morning. As Ryan said, my name is Julie Reschke. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a senior policy analyst here at CMAP. Today, I'll be talking to you about the existing conditions report that the RTP published last week. At your last board meeting, you received an update about the regional vision or the century plan, which included a preview of some analyses that CMAP has been working on. With the RTP already underway at the same time, we were able to use some of this work to explore high-level trends affecting transportation specifically. Later in the fall, the Century Plan will take a deeper dive into these analyses, ultimately considering a more comprehensive, wide-ranging set of topics. But for today, I'd like to preview some details about the RTP Existing Conditions Report, as well as a handful of high-level findings. You may remember that the RTP published the Emerging Priorities Report this past February, which outlined preliminary goals and objectives for our transportation system based on early research and stakeholder feedback. The Existing Conditions Report helps continue the conversation about these goal areas by identifying trends, challenges, and opportunities that can help inform how the region might strategize to implement our vision for transportation. As such, you'll see that the report is structured by the 5 goal areas on the screen, providing key details about each. Examining existing conditions is an inherent part of the long-range transportation planning process. Along with other resources like the socioeconomic forecast, policy briefs, and additional analysis, this work helps answer the question of what are the challenges and opportunities to achieve the region's transportation vision. Information like this serves as an origin point for upcoming discussions about RTP strategies and policy development, which will be happening in full force by this fall. And finally, before we get into the content, a little bit about the report. The report features high-level data-informed takeaways about major topics that are affecting our regional transportation system. The exercise here was not to look at every possible data point, but rather to provide a more clear and curated narrative about impactful dynamics and circumstances that we're seeing today. Okay. So since the existing conditions report includes nearly 70 data visualizations like maps, tables, and charts, I will not be able to cover all of the content in the report during the meeting today, but instead I'll provide a handful of key takeaways that may be particularly informative for upcoming discussions about RTP strategies. So when we look at the age composition of the region's residents, we see that we have an aging population. This means that seniors over 65 represent a growing proportion of the total population, while the share of children and working age adults are both decreasing. These changes align with CMAP's ongoing work on a regional socioeconomic forecast, signaling that these trends are likely to continue into the future. Changes in the age composition of the region can have big implications for transportation planning. For example, there may be shifts in where, when, and how residents need to travel through the region, and governments may need to consider more mobility options to support residents' ability to age in place. Since 2010, there's been relatively stagnant population growth. While the number of residents in the region has remained largely constant, we're seeing a growth in households. At the same time, households have become smaller, with a decreasing share of households having children. Growth in the number of households has been driven primarily by people living alone, married couples without children, non-family arrangements like roommates or non-married couples, and family members living together. While these changes mirror national trends and are not unique to Northeastern Illinois, residents living in more, smaller households could have an impact on the connections the transportation system needs to make. The most notable commute change we see post-COVID is a growth in working remotely. On average, the number of residents working from home has tripled compared to pre-pandemic years. It appears, however, that this option is not uniformly available to all people. For example, we see higher earning households as well as white and Asian residents working remotely more often than the regional average. While these are notable changes, we know that about 60% of jobs in the region cannot be done remotely. And so connecting residents to economic opportunity remains a priority. For example, the commute downtown remains common, with the Loop being the densest job center in the region. There are also several suburban job centers in municipalities like Oak Brook, Naperville, Schaumburg, Deerfield, and more. A concerning trend that we see is that crash fatalities have been trending upward since 2014. While serious injuries have declined since 2020, fatalities remain somewhat elevated, indicating that crashes may be becoming more deadly. Of these fatal and serious crashes, bicyclists and pedestrians are disproportionately impacted. And the data shows that bicyclists and pedestrians younger than 18 and older than 55 are overrepresented in these fatal and serious crashes. For residents who cannot or do not drive, forms of active transportation like walking and biking provide crucial connections to destinations and other modes like transit. Travelers that are not inside vehicles are particularly vulnerable to fatal and serious crashes. And we see that some areas in the region face higher rates of these crashes. Looking forward, efforts like the countywide safety action plans will help provide a greater understanding of local contexts and support the identification of stronger solutions. While the transportation sector is a large contributor to regional emissions, it's also affected by climate-related conditions. In particular, flooding is a challenge in Northeastern Illinois, and floods can weaken transportation infrastructure and cause barriers to mobility where they happen. And unfortunately, a substantial share of our transportation structures have high or very high flood risk. Extreme heat can also significantly affect residents traveling throughout the region, with transit riders at unsheltered stops and stations being particularly at risk for exposure to high temperatures. Effectively mitigating these risks will be crucial to maintain existing infrastructure and to continue providing essential transportation options. On the economy front, Northeastern Illinois' regional economy continues to grow. Between 2010 and 2023, the economy grew 71% and added 4,300,000 new jobs. While we are largely in line with peer metropolitan areas, our growth has been slower than some places like New York, Los Angeles, and the national average of 84%. If the region would like to see more economic growth, the data indicates that our transportation system could play a key role in making that happen. For example, the overwhelming majority of jobs are near major transportation assets. 52% of jobs are within 1 mile of an interstate, and 35% are walking distance from transit stations. Additionally, transportation, distribution, and logistics represents one of the strongest performing clusters in our regional economy. And job growth in the freight sector at 11% has outpaced overall job growth in the region at 7.8%. It's apparent that transportation is an economic strength in Northeastern Illinois, driving better outcomes for workers and businesses. And for my last quick recap, before we close out here, a large portion of the region's transportation infrastructure was built in the 1950s and 1960s. As these structures continue to age, there's risk of them falling into poor condition without coordinated investment and strategic asset management approaches. Looking ahead, there are some potential challenges to meet this moment. For example, tolled interstates rely on toll revenue, a strong funding source that helps these assets have lower average ages. In the broader transportation network, however, varying funding sources and investment cycles have made it more challenging to maintain critical assets. Additionally, some key revenue sources have weakened over time. For example, revenue from the motor fuel tax has decreased as fuel efficiency has improved and electric vehicles have become more common. The transportation infrastructure that the region has is vast. Maintaining these essential connections will be crucial to continue providing transportation options to residents and supporting the regional economy. So like I mentioned at the start of the presentation, those were just some high-level findings to give you a sense of the type of information that's featured in greater depth in the RTP Existing Conditions Report. The full report is available on CMAP's website, as well as the RTP engagement site, the link for which is on the screen here. The RTP engagement site also includes a link to an ArcGIS site where viewers can look at the maps featured in the report in greater detail. And over time, we aim to update and add to this ArcGIS site. Looking forward, the RTP will continue to provide information to support strategic conversations later this year. Over the next several months, we'll return with policy briefs, additional analysis, and insights from partners and community members. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions or comments.
Questions on the report? Go ahead, Mayor.
First of all, great report. This is a super nuanced, weird question, but is there enough data to assess the impact of the increased use of motorized bikes and scooters, the scourge of all municipalities? Because you talked about the impacts on pedestrians and bicyclists, and we're seeing this rise and panic in our town. We're going to talk about it on Monday. So I didn't know if you had any data on that yet.
We didn't look into that for this report, but is your concern kind of more around the safety piece of it? Or
Yeah.
Okay,
Absolutely.
absolutely. Okay, we can look at further into that.
Great. Thank you.
Appropriate comment, Mayor. All our towns now are facing just an astronomical increase in these motorized vehicles for young people that, can go as even electric ones up to 20, 25 miles an hour, let alone the other motorized. And it is becoming a problem, major problem with most municipalities as to how to deal with that. We build bike paths and walkways and they're being utilized by these moving vehicles, which has caused great concern about accidents and or just general safety. There's no regulation regarding it. These kids, young kids are on this without helmets and, cities certainly liable in a lot of ways for as much as we have. But I believe we have good infrastructure, sidewalks, streets. All it takes is, some minor crack in the street or some falls from inappropriate action by those drivers that put us in great liability. So the question is going around the region now as to the state has no regulations whether the cities, should step it up and I know sometimes they're banning it altogether on streets. So that is I guess a question for staff to look into that type of reports. And I'm sure they're slowly going to come out more and more as far as getting local reports on accidents and or injuries. Good point. Great report. Julie and Ryan, thank you both. And again, my compliments to staff, especially the graphics department. You make everything so simple. Everything flows so easily and understandable. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Moving on to item 7 on the technical assistance, the call for projects. Patrick?
Good morning. Testing my volume. I'm Patrick Day, Planning Principal. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm here to talk to you today about the 2025 Technical Assistance Call for Projects. We continue to have a strong response to this joint call with the Regional Transportation Authority, and I'll be sharing with you the resulting community support that we have in store for the coming year and talk about the impact and regional value that these types of partnerships provide. For over a decade, CMAP has been providing planning resources to communities throughout northeastern Illinois and has assisted communities through more than 300 planning projects. Specifically, CMAP provides technical assistance to support communities as they plan, collaborate, innovate, and advance regional goals. This call was conducted in the spring, and from it, we are excited to support 30 communities with new projects. But as in recent years, the call again showed us the needs for our communities outpaces CMAP's current capacity. CMAP identifies a mix of assistance each year to meet the needs of the region. This slide shows the types of support offered in this year's call and the communities that we will partner with for each. A couple of highlights. In the coming year, we will work with 4 communities to support them in completing ADA transition plans. ADA plans had the highest number of applications this year, showing that our communities continue to be committed to ADA compliance. We are also partnering with 6 communities to complete capital improvement plans, or CIPs, which is more than we've ever done in a year. This large response from communities demonstrates they're seeing the value of long-range planning and making data-driven decisions. Finally, pavement management plans continue to be much in demand. Here we have the same information, but displayed geographically. We're excited about the types of work we're doing, but we're also, as this map displays, excited to be supporting communities across the entire region. Technical assistance empowers communities and brings to life the principles of ON2 2050. It leads to stronger communities that are able to overcome local challenges and advance regional goals. The impact of this assistance can be seen in success stories, such as a few I'll share today. In Summit, the village was awarded more than $6.5 million from several fund sources to fund design and replacement of a pedestrian bridge. This need was identified through a CMAP-supported comprehensive plan, followed up on with CMAP implementation support, and will lead to a much-celebrated ribbon cutting. At the county scale, in McHenry County, a shared services and coordinated investment plan led to creation of a shared service coordinator position, allowing significant cost savings and improved coordination amongst units of government across the county. And in Richmond, the village recently completed and unanimously adopted its first bicycle and pedestrian plan. CMAP provided the community with guidance and recommendations for developing a safer, more well-connected network of bicycle and pedestrian paths. A key milestone was when Richmond Grade School participated in a Bike to School Day this May. Thank you for your time this morning and allowing me to share how we're going to be supporting communities in the coming year. Technical assistance call continues to be very popular, and that's due in no small part to your efforts in getting the word out to your communities. So thank you. And I'm now happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Any questions of Ryan?
Patrick.
Okay. Thanks, Ryan. And again, to the board.
Patrick. Thank you, Mayor.
I'm sorry, Patrick.
That's okay.
Got my names mixed up this morning. Again, Pat, thanks. One of the primary reasons this agency has been successful is almost 20 years ago when we formed this agency. One of the things that happened within the first few months was a federal grant by Senator Durbin to this agency of almost $3.5 million, which gave us the baseline or premise to begin the LTA programs. And over the years, how many projects have been funded by this agency, small to big, but things that local governments didn't have the opportunity, they didn't have planners, they didn't have the money to do it, and how this agency has helped so many communities across what's the total over almost 20 years? It's incredible. It's
200, 300, over
300.
300. Yeah.
And the success of this program has really, made the agency what it was supposed to be and work throughout the region in providing that type of planning and assistance. So it's been the benchmark of this agency. And as we go forward, and roll into funding going forward, that has really been a success. And I thank staff for making it a priority of anything else, the direct assistance to local governments for these LTA grants.
Yeah, and I was supposed to provide some bridge language, when Patrick was walking up about this is the type of things that we want to continue to do with the $2 million in state appropriation. Again, it's not going towards us, really focused on making this agency bigger in and of itself. It's about us making sure that the communities across our region do have the types of technical resources that they need to be able to solve critical challenges. I mean, again, we know that all of our communities face some sort of challenge, whether it's water, whether it's attracting new development to a downtown site that they've had for a while. And, we really want to be able to provide that service. So we're excited about having a $2 million appropriation. We really want to show the General Assembly that this is something that is hugely valued. But I'll let John maybe talk about the legislative session.
Great
Thank you.
segue, John.
It's a good segue, is right. I'm John Carpenter, Director of Intergovernmental Affairs. As Aaron noted, we'd like to thank you all for your expressions of interest, your engagement on this issue. Your conversations with legislators, your legislative delegation were crucial to getting this $2 million appropriation included in this year's state budget. With respect to the budget, the General Assembly passed a $55.2 billion budget during the final hours of the session, along with the companion budget implementation and revenue bills. The budget increases spending by about 4% compared to the previous fiscal year. Included in this package is a $100 million budget reserve for immediate disbursement and governmental efficiencies, BRIDGE fund, to address any unanticipated delays in funding or failures of revenue. The revenue package, totaling about $800 million, includes some new taxes on sports betting, tobacco products, vape products, and additional taxes on foreign and out-of-state corporations doing business in Illinois. Taken together, the final budget package takes into account an approximate $500 million shortfall in revenue projections since the governor put out his budget address last February. Additionally, as was the case last year, the budget diverts approximately $171 million of motor fuel sales tax revenues from the road fund to the general revenue fund. With respect to transit reform and funding, a key issue in this year's General Assembly that didn't get finalized, one of the largest outstanding items of the General Assembly is the future of transit reform and funding. Representative Delgado and Senator Villabalam both filed transit reform bills during the last week of session. These bills would create a new Northern Illinois Transit Authority, otherwise being referred to as NITA, to oversee the operations of CTA, Metra, and PACE. The Senate bill also included revenue proposals to increase funding available for transit operations and capital. After several amendments during the final moments of the session, the Senate passed their bill by a vote of 32 to 22. Keep in mind that 30 votes are needed for passage, so it wasn't a wide margin. The House did not take up the Senate bill, nor did the House bill move to the floor for a vote. The governor and legislative leadership have indicated that work is needed this summer to address the governance and funding issues raised throughout the committee hearings and legislative debate. The General Assembly is not scheduled to reconvene until the veto session in October. However, there's talk of a special session this summer if the discussions on the transit solution move forward. The IGA team will focus our outreach this summer on the need for stable, reliable sources for funding our regional transit system, and CMAP will continue to engage with legislators on the recommendations included in the part report to help inform a future bill. With that, I'm happy to take any questions you may have.
First of all, thanks for your work and staff efforts down in Springfield. If you were down there, you saw John walking the halls all the time up until the midnight hour when session ended. So we are very appreciative of the General Assembly in finally allocating, after 20 years, some money directly to CMAP for this organization. However, because we cannot get a direct or a continuing appropriations, apparently we're going to have to be down there every year doing this. We hope that this establishes a funding that's going to be successful. As I spoke to leadership, this money goes directly back to local governments. I don't know how better you can allocate money. And in consideration of the amount of monies that are allocated for other special grants in the appropriations bill, honestly, the $2 million is meager in comparison to what the total grant allocations that take place. And again, these are direct dollars that go right back to the community and help them in a very meaningful and, as indicated, helpful way for them to plan, how they go about their business in the community. So we thank you. We know you're going to be back down there again.
Yeah, we're hopeful that this establishes a precedent that once we're able to demonstrate the value of these funds to the communities, to legislators' districts, that it's less controversial going forward and more accepted as something that ought to be done every year. As you said, current general assemblies can't bind future general assemblies, and the budget has to be done every year. So we will be back and demonstrate to the General Assembly the value that they provided to their communities.
Yeah, again, John, thanks. And again, to get sponsorship again next year, and hopefully now co-signers or co-sponsors right off the bat, based upon,
Yeah, I think a key to our success partly this year was the caliber of sponsors that we had and co-sponsors, and that proved to be helpful.
other questions regarding legislation? John, thank you again.
Thank you.
And I'll just share that we're going to continue to pay attention to the transit legislation. We know that funding is critically important for our transit systems as well. I think one of the things that as we look at sort of the options that have been put on the table, again, we keep going back to try and understand and better articulate what those dollars actually might do. Again, our part report really focused on transportation funding for transit, and part of that is we want to make sure that there are stable sources of revenue as well. So as more of these funding proposals come through, I think our staff will continue to analyze, provide resources, continue to support decision makers if they have questions about those issues.
It'll be a busy summer.
Yep.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thanks. All right, under other business, I'd just like to note that John Robertson is not here. And if you've been reading the newspaper, John is going to be appointed to the Obama Foundation. Good for him. Maybe that's halfway out of politics, but maybe halfway in. But I wish him the best. We appreciate his contribution not only to CMAP City on the board, but certainly his contribution to the city of Chicago and the work that he's done over the years. He's a bright young man, and we wish him the best success going forward. So hopefully we will get an appointment over the summer.
We are working on it.
Already.
We'll see.
Any other business? Again, the board won't meet until September, so you have the summer off. Mayor, go ahead.
Thank you. So I'm going to address, I think, maybe a delicate topic, and I hope to do it delicately, but I take it as a privilege when DuPage County and DuPage mayors asked me to be on this board. We ask a lot of staff to attend these meetings, and I think maybe during the summertime, I'd ask Aaron, and maybe more on your plate, Jerry, is there or should there be an attendance policy or at least a guideline to have people here in attendance? I look around the room this morning, there are more empty seats than filled seats. I realize everybody has, busy lives, and usually the people that get appointed to these types of boards is because they have busy lives and they're accomplished people, or at least I like to think that. And but I think in messaging alone, not only legal requirements, that there should be at least a guideline, if not a policy, about attending in person and only maybe a couple of successive Zoom appearances and maybe a maximum of Zoom appearances. And if you can't attend on a regular basis, then maybe there should be someone who replaces you. In order for us to be better at our jobs, and another great part of being on these types of boards with accomplished people is that you get to know them. And you don't get to know them if they're not here. Just a summer project maybe. And,
Mayor, you read my mind. Before the meeting, I was talking to exactly about that. And it is true. I mean, I've had the honor and privilege of chairing this organization for close to 20 years. And I'll be honest, in the early years, we didn't really have a problem, I think, with attendance. And as you indicated, to be appointed to this board is a privilege, like any board that you would be appointed to. We just met down in Springfield, Mayor Reinbold and I, yesterday with the Illinois Municipal League for the appointments to the board of directors and leadership on those boards. And as the mayor would agree, the major question that was asked of these candidates, are you committed to serving on the board? Are you going to be in attendance of meetings? That's number one priority. And I think for those sitting around this room, who I know a lot of people over the years, that commitment, stepping forward and being an active participant, attending meetings, and especially for this agency, because of the restrictions we are under with state law, as far as having a quorum and having a supermajority vote, which on other issues going forward, we want to see that continue because I think it is a better consensus type of vote. We need to have people here, and we've struggled with this over time about even trying to get a quorum down here for a meeting. We only meet once a month. We're off for 3 months out of the year, 3 months. So it's 9 meetings, and hopefully we can make a commitment. But to answer your question directly, I had just spoke to our executive director prior to the meeting regarding that issue, and we will talk and hopefully address the board going forward with that. So again, to those who are here, thank you, and I know for those even on Zoom, thank you for serving. But we can't be scrambling every month as to panicking whether or not we're going to have a quorum or not. And that means primarily to be here. Thank you for bringing that up. Under public comment, we have anybody on the line? I would expect.
We do have Garland.
Garland, good morning.
Good morning. It's Garland Armstrong, formerly of Des Plaines and Elmwood Park, now living in Des Moines, Iowa. How you doing, everybody?
We're doing great, Garland. Hope you are too.
Me and Heather is here at the Chick-fil-A here in Ankeny, Iowa. We just finished playing bingo, and Heather won 3, and I won 1 free bingo here. So we're just finishing up, and I just want to make sure that the ADA understands what is happening right now and needs to understand a clear, decisive language of it, because there are some who cannot speak clear English, but I hope some of them for CMAP understands what's happening right now so they can see the reality of it, and making sure that this will make sure that their lives is most important of all, and understand what kind of ideas and suggestions they got, because they really need some good communication and training on it. So I want to give kudos to those over there at CMAP on making sure that they really understand the language, even though they don't understand the reality of it, and especially the new ones. But we need to make sure that the disability community can be all part of it and not to be disconnected, and making sure that they could be there in person, that if they have any suggestions or comments on it. So I want to give kudos to them at CMAP and making sure that, and further out in other Collier counties and DuPage and Kane, McHenry, Lake and Will, making sure about it, because they really need some help, because they feel like they're being disconnected and not part of it in their community. So for those board members in other communities and in municipalities, make sure they have access to it, and that they really need it so they can be extremely well prepared for it, because they feel like they're out of touch, but they need to get in touch as soon as possible and do whatever you can to help them out. So that's all I have to say. So any board member have any questions or comments from me, what I'm saying or not?
Garland, thank you. Thank you for your continued advocacy for ADA. And you and Heather enjoy the summer, okay?
We will, and stay hydrated and don't eat too much. So including all the board members too, because y'all need it, and drink plenty of water, or bring something along with you to stay hydrated, everybody, so you won't end up in a hospital.
Good advice, Garland. Thank you.
All right.
Next meeting is, again, not till September. And again, unfortunately, I shouldn't say again, but unfortunately, the executive committee will not be able to meet because we don't have an in-person quorum for that activity to take place. So unfortunately with that, I don't think we had too crazy things that were going on anyway. So.
No, just regular financials. So.
To your point, Mayor. Yes. All right, ladies and gentlemen, again, thank you. Enjoy the summer. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Holford.
Second, all in favor, signify by the usual manner.
Aye.
Motion carried, meeting adjourned.
We'll see you September 10th.
Enjoy the summer, staff. Well, whatever.